I'm going to be talking through how to solve an equation like this. We have square roots, and to undo those so that we can solve for x, we want to square both sides of the equation. Now, ideally, we want to make this as simple as possible on ourselves. And so if we leave this minus 3 on this side, when we square both sides, you'd have to square this entire side. So it's not going to cancel out the square root quite as neatly as if we had added the 3 to both sides to start with. So let's go ahead and add the 3 to both sides and then square. So I have that now. When you add 3 to both sides, the 3 comes over here on the left. And now when I square both sides, I'm squaring both entire sides. And so, like I was saying, on the right side now, it's going to cancel out very nicely. The square root and the squared cancel each other out, so you're just left with the 6x plus 9. Now on the left, we have to actually do the squaring process because we don't have the square root over the entire side. And so what we mean by actually squaring is, what that means is to multiply the value by itself, multiply it together 2 times. So we take that square root of 3x plus 3 and multiply it by itself. And so to do that, you may have heard of it called the FOIL method, but you take each term here in this first and multiply by every term in the second. So when you do square root of 3x times square root of 3x, that's a square root times itself. You just get the 3x back. And then when you multiply it by 3, you get plus 3 times square root of 3x. And so then you need to do the same thing with the next term. Multiply it by everything in the second part. So 3 times the square root of 3x is 3 times the square root of 3x. And then 3 times 3, or 3 squared, would be 9. So that's the expansion of the left side when you square both sides, and our right side is just 6x plus 9. So now we need to reduce this as much as we can on the left. So there's nothing to combine the 3x with. These have the same value under the square root, so we can add them together. If we have 3 of them and then we get 3 more of them, we have a total of 6 multiplied by that square root of 3x, and then plus 9. So the left side now is reduced by combining those. And what we can do now is add the same thing to both sides of the equation, or subtract the same thing. So let's subtract 3x from both sides. And let's also subtract 9 from both sides. So subtracting 9 from both sides is going to cancel those out, and subtracting 3x is going to reduce this down to just 3x. 6x minus the 3x. And over here it's canceled. And over here we have 6 square root of 3x. So we still have a square root, so we're going to have to square both sides to get rid of that. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the 6 so that it's just the square root on this side, and that's dividing both sides by 6. So let me come up here to the top. If I divide the left side by 6, the 6 is gone, and then 3 divided by 6, 3 over 6, you'd have just 1/2. So 3 divided by 6 is 1/2 x. So now let me square both sides, and make sure again that you square the entire side. I like to draw parentheses around everything so you remember to square everything. So squaring a square root cancels out by definition, so you just have the 3x. And over here, when you just square it all, so square the 1/2. 1/2 times 1/2 would be 1 over 4. And then x squared would be x squared. So now we finally have no square roots in the problem, and we can solve. Personally, I don't like fractions, so I'm just going to multiply everything by 4, and as long as you do both sides by the same value, the equation's still equal. So if I multiply over here by 4, I just have x squared, and over here I'm going to have 12x. So now there's no fractions. So let's set this up. Subtract 12x from both sides. Getting a little crowded here on my sheet, but you get 0 equals x squared minus 12x. And now we can solve this. You can use the quadratic equation. I think factoring is probably, or the quadratic formula you can use. I think factoring is probably easier in this case because they both have an x, so you pull one x out, and that leaves you then with x minus 12. And so we have two things multiplied together equal to 0. One of them has to be 0. So to make this x term 0, you would have x equals 0. And to make this second term 0, x would have to equal 12. So those are the two solutions we've reached. Now you always want to plug those back in and check to make sure they're actually valid solutions. Sometimes when you square both sides, you get an invalid solution. And regardless, it is always a good idea to check your answers to make sure that you haven't made a mistake along the way. So let me clear some space here. If you plug in the 0, over here you get 3 times 0, square root of 0, 0. Over here you get 0 plus 9. So square root of 9 is 3. 3 minus 3 is 0. So the 0 checks out. That's a good solution. Let's plug in the 12. 3 times 12 is 36. Square root of 36 is 6. Here we have 6 times 12, which is 72. Plus 9 would be 81. Square root of 81 is 9. 9 minus 3 is 6. So both of our answers here check out. You plug them in, they're good. These are the two solutions to this equation.